At its peak, a single woman held billions in stolen Bitcoin inside a suburban London house. The funds were proceeds from the pensions of 128,000 elderly Chinese investors. Her goal was to crown herself a real-world queen. This is the true story behind the so-called Chinese crypto queen. But how did an ordinary takeaway worker become the front for the largest crypto bust in UK history? The answer begins years before the police kicked down their door. In cities across China, the promise was simple: invest your retirement savings and secure a future free from worry. Lantian Jirui's brochures spoke of zero-risk returns and partnerships with respected institutions. For many, these claims were enough. Over 128,000 pensioners, some living on modest monthly stipends, others relying on family support, placed their trust and their life savings into the scheme. The company's sales teams operated in every province, holding meetings in community centers, and even the Great Hall of the People, where endorsements from public figures added an air of legitimacy. For retirees like Mr. Liu, a former railway worker, the investment represented decades of disciplined saving. He transferred his pension fund, expecting to help his grandchildren attend university. Mrs. Zhang, a widow in her 70s, hoped the returns would cover her cancer treatment. She was told the company's Life Ring plan was government-backed. The reality was far different. When payments stopped in 2017, phone lines went dead. Offices shuttered overnight. Thousands of families discovered that their nest eggs, meant for health care, housing, or a dignified old age, had vanished. Lawyer Jack Ding, representing hundreds of victims, described the aftermath. Several people have lost their life savings, while others have been unable to receive cancer treatment. In rural towns, neighbors pooled resources to help those who had been left penniless. Some victims lost their homes, forced to move in with relatives or rely on charity. Others, too ashamed to tell their families, withdrew from community life entirely. The psychological toll was as severe as the financial loss. The scale of the fraud is staggering. £600 million siphoned off in just 3 years, with the majority of victims over the age of 60. Many were first-time investors, unfamiliar with the risks of complex financial products. Lantian Jirui's agents used WeChat groups and local networks to build trust, encouraging retirees to recruit friends and neighbors. As the scheme grew, so did the sense of security, until it all collapsed. Even now, the question of restitution remains unresolved. Some early investors received partial payouts, but for most, the money is gone. Court proceedings in the UK and China have yet to deliver compensation. The pain is not just in the numbers, but in the everyday realities. Medical treatments postponed, plans for grandchildren abandoned, and the quiet shame of having been deceived. Behind every Bitcoin seized in London lies a story like this. Each digital coin represents a broken promise, a pension lost, and a lifetime of savings wiped away in the blink of an eye. Jimin Qian understood that survival depended on remaining invisible. From the very beginning, she avoided the spotlight, registering her company under another person's name and signing official documents as Ren Zhengtao. This alias became her shield, allowing her to direct Lantian Jirui operations while keeping her own identity off the record. Every layer of paperwork, every offshore shell company was designed to distance her from the fraud's daily mechanics. She rarely appeared at public events, leaving marketing to trusted lieutenants. When authorities or investors asked questions, answers came from proxies. Even as the company expanded across China, Qian's name stayed hidden in the background, surfacing only in legal filings or on obscure digital ledgers. Her approach to money mirrored her approach to control. In June 2014, she opened cryptocurrency accounts under her alias at Huobi, one of China's largest exchanges. Investor funds moved through a maze of accounts, sometimes routed through mining operations in Guangzhou, sometimes shifted directly into Bitcoin. The company's own mining farm, with 1,000 machines running day and night, produced coins that were quietly siphoned off and consolidated under Qian's control. When the mining ceased in 2015, she switched to direct conversions, always keeping the flows just out of reach of regulators. By the time the Chinese government announced its sweeping cryptocurrency ban in September 2017, Qian had already started pulling her assets out. She obtained a St. Kitts and Nevis passport, left China, and began moving funds abroad. The majority of the stolen money was now digital, stored in wallets protected by complex passwords and encryption, no longer tied to a physical bank or a real-world address. Her fortune could cross borders without a trace. That was the plan. But even as she built this fortress of aliases and offshore structures, Qian faced a new problem. Converting Bitcoin to cash or using it to buy property required a clean identity. She needed someone with no criminal record, someone who could open doors in the UK financial system. That search would soon lead her to Jian Wen, a woman whose life could not have been more different from her own. Qian remained the architect in the shadows, orchestrating every move, but she would need a front to step into the light. Jian Wen's world changed overnight. She left behind a cramped room above a takeaway in Leeds and stepped into a 6-bedroom mansion in North London, where the monthly rent alone was £17,000, a sum that would have taken her years to earn at her old job. Landlords and property managers were handed crisp rental agreements and deposits that arrived faster than most could process. In the space of a few months, Wen's lifestyle became a study in financial whiplash. Designer handbags stacked in the hallway, luxury watches delivered by courier, and receipts from Zurich jewelers and Dubai realtors piling up alongside supermarket bills. The neighbors in Hampstead, used to quiet affluence, couldn't help but notice the new tenants' spending habits. Wen enrolled her son in a private school, paid the fees in advance, and began hosting dinner parties where the wine flowed as freely as the stories about her mysterious jewelry business. When asked about the source of her sudden wealth, Wen talked about Bitcoin mining and overseas investments, but her answers never quite added up. The explanations were vague, the timelines slippery. Property agents found themselves caught between suspicion and commission. One recalled Wen touring a £5 million house, nodding approvingly at the marble floors, and asking if the garden was big enough for a swimming pool. She offered to pay the full year's rent up front. The paperwork listed her as an executive at a jewelry firm, but background checks turned up little more than a thin digital trail and a handful of photos from her days above the takeaway. Her spending was relentless. Tens of thousands disappeared in a single afternoon on Bond Street. In Dubai, she snapped up apartments worth £500,000. At Cartier, she selected diamond necklaces as if shopping for groceries. The sheer scale of these transactions began to strain the patience of banks and estate agents, who were required by law to ask uncomfortable questions about the origins of her funds. Wen's responses grew more creative, but less convincing. What began as an attempt to blend in with London's wealthy elite instead drew attention from every quarter: landlords, solicitors, and eventually, the authorities. The more Wen tried to pass as a legitimate businesswoman, the more her story unraveled. Forensic accountants started to follow the money, tracing the flow from digital wallets to luxury goods, from Bitcoin to bricks and mortar. In the end, it wasn't the blockchain that exposed the operation. It was the simple human act of spending too much, too fast. The absurdity of a former takeaway worker living like a lottery winner did more to raise suspicion than any algorithm ever could. The turning point came not in a boardroom or a courtroom, but in a cluttered upstairs bedroom in North London. Investigators, armed with a search warrant and a list of suspicious transactions, swept through the house where Jian Wen now lived. Among the designer handbags and receipts, they found what mattered most: a collection of laptops and hard drives, each encrypted and protected by layers of passwords. For months, these devices sat in an evidence locker, their secrets locked away behind digital walls. Specialist cybercrime analysts from the Metropolitan Police began the slow, methodical process of unlocking the devices. They used forensic software to recover deleted files, extracted fragments of wallet backups from hidden folders, and pieced together password hints from browser histories and chat logs. Eventually, in 2021, their breakthrough came. The password to a single wallet opened the door to a sprawling web of cryptocurrency accounts, over 61,000 Bitcoin, scattered across dozens of addresses, all clustering back to the same digital fingerprint. On the blockchain, every transaction is public, but identities are hidden behind strings of letters and numbers. Investigators applied clustering heuristics, techniques that group addresses based on common patterns of use. By tracking which wallets sent funds together and which were accessed from the same device, they mapped out the core of Qian's empire. The analysis revealed that coins moved in coordinated batches, often routed through exchanges, sometimes with brief stops at mixers designed to break the trail. But the scale of the transfers, often thousands of Bitcoin at a time, made them stand out. No ordinary miner or trader moved funds like this. The forensic breakthrough came when analysts matched the flow of Bitcoin from these clustered wallets directly to Wen's spending. Payments for luxury goods, property deposits, and even school fees could be traced, step by step, from the blockchain to real-world transactions. The story told by the data was irrefutable. Wen's sudden wealth was not the result of a lucky investment, but of laundering proceeds from a vast fraud. Each time she tried to convert Bitcoin into cash, she left a digital breadcrumb for investigators to follow. Legal proof required more than suspicion. Prosecutors needed to show that the Bitcoin in Wen's possession was the same money stolen from Chinese pensioners. The unlocked devices provided that link, connecting the abstract world of digital currency to the physical evidence of luxury watches, property contracts, and bank transfers. The blockchain, once seen as a shield for criminals, became the prosecution's most powerful tool. The illusion of anonymity shattered, exposing not just the mechanics of the fraud, but the human hands behind it. As the investigation deepened, every attempt to spend or move the Bitcoin created new leads, each one tightening the net around Wen and ultimately Qian. The stage was set for the next misstep, a failed attempt to buy a Hampstead mansion that would bring the entire operation crashing down. Solicitors handling the £23.5 million Hampstead mansion purchase followed a simple mandate: no sale without clear proof of funds. Jian Wen, dressed for the part of a wealthy buyer, arrived with stories of Bitcoin mining and a lucrative jewelry business. On paper, she was an executive with access to untold wealth. But when the lawyers requested documentation, the facade began to crumble. Bank statements were vague, with no traceable source for the millions. Blockchain records, when examined by compliance teams, showed coins that had never passed through mining pools or legitimate business accounts. The explanations grew more elaborate, but the numbers refused to add up. Under UK anti-money laundering law, property professionals are required to file a suspicious activity report if they suspect criminal origins for client funds. The email chains between Wen, her solicitors, and the estate agents quickly shifted in tone, from polite inquiry to pointed skepticism. The claim that tens of millions in Bitcoin had been generated by a small jewelry operation in Leeds drew outright disbelief. Internal compliance officers flagged the file, and within days, a suspicious activity report landed on the desk of the National Crime Agency. Once the report was filed, the transaction froze. The mansion owners withdrew the property from the market. For Wen and her silent partner, the attempt to buy their way into London's elite had triggered the full scale of the UK financial crime apparatus. A single request for proof of funds had set off a chain reaction, turning suspicion into a full-scale investigation that would soon reach back to the heart of China's missing billions. Zemin Qian's ambitions stretched far beyond the safe houses and shell companies she built to hide her fortune. Among the seized evidence, investigators found a leather-bound diary filled with notes, calculations, and something else, a plan to buy her way out of the reach of any government. She set her sights on Liberland, a self-declared micronation wedged between Croatia and Serbia, famous mostly for its libertarian ideals and its willingness to sell citizenship to anyone with the right connections or the right amount of money. Qian's diary outlined a vision of diplomatic immunity, not as a privilege earned through service, but as a commodity to be acquired. She believed that with enough Bitcoin, borders could be erased and laws could be bent. Her notes included the price of Liberland's citizenship, the cost of a diplomatic passport, and the steps required to secure a title that would place her beyond extradition. She wrote about becoming the Queen of Liberland, imagining herself as a sovereign ruler, immune from the courts of China or the reach of Interpol. For Qian, the fantasy was not just escape, it was transformation. She had spent years operating in the shadows, always one step ahead of regulators and police. Now she dreamed of stepping into the light, not as a fugitive, but as royalty. The absurdity of this vision was matched only by her confidence. In her mind, Bitcoin was not only a store of value, but a ticket to a new identity and a new world. The more the walls closed in, the more elaborate her plans for sovereignty became, as if money alone could rewrite the rules of reality. Even as 61,000 Bitcoins sit in police custody, billions in crypto move daily across borders, often beyond the reach of law or consequence. Financial systems promise transparency, yet digital fortunes still vanish in the shadows. Each new scheme tests how much trust we place in code over accountability. The next heist may already be underway. What would you do to stop it?